It is a sad state when shit like this doesn't surprise me. Hello, this is Mara Jade, and I'm back with another video, and where have we seen elsewhere certain entities piggybacking off an existing IP to tell the stories they want to tell, no matter how it goes against world building or the canon as a whole, pretty much. Where have we seen that shit before? And now we're seeing it with the new D&D movie set to premiere this month on Netflix, the Among Thieves film, where the directors are now admitting they're essentially using the IP as a, quote, costume. They're still going to make the movie they want to make. It's almost like they know it's going to be a dumpster fire, so they're like, fuck it, we'll go down with the ship before it even sails. But at any rate, let's just dive right into this article so we can get a gauge of how exactly these directors are going about. So without further ado, here it is. In a rather surprising moment of saying the quiet part out loud, Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves directors Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly have admitted that rather than viewing an established IP as something to be treated with reverence and care, they instead view them as nothing more than a bit of costume to get ourselves in the door. Yeah, again, where have we seen that before? Goldstein and Daly, whom many may recognize as the screenwriting duo behind Marvel's Spider-Man Homecoming and the co-directing team who helmed the 2018 dark comedy film Game Night, provided this insight into their creative views during a recent interview given to Variety's Adam B. Vary in promotion of their upcoming live-action take on the eponymous tabletop RPG. Following a brief recollection of their respective first experiences with the game itself, Daly was introduced to the game on the set of Freaks and Geeks, while a 12-year-old Goldstein was first introduced to it by his older brother. The creative team was subsequently asked by Vary if these experiences impacted their creative approach to Honor Among Thieves. Quote, "It wasn't so much that," began Goldstein. "It was seeing the potential to bring what we had brought to small and medium-sized movies to a much bigger canvas. We didn't want to do a straightforward fantasy epic drama, nor did we want to do a spoof or something where the comedy was the lead of it. We wanted to do a movie that was true to the spirit of the game, would appeal to the fans, but also could stand on its own." What I have a problem with in that last sentence is the spirit of the game. It's just as bad, in my opinion, just as bad as people were saying, well, at least it feels like said whatever IP. At least it feels like this. It shouldn't just feel like said IP or like it should fit in said IP. It shouldn't just be true to the spirit of said IP or whatever. It should be, essentially. You should be able to watch something and it be that IP, that world. It shouldn't just feel like it. So I have a problem with them saying true to the spirit of the game. That is a red flag, in my opinion, to me. Alright? And the fans, again, we're living in a world where fans now should be in quotes. Because the fans they're most likely talking about, in my opinion, again, I'm just going off of the quote itself, and from my experiences dealing with the current state of Dungeons & Dragons, are the ones who wanted to bring in identity politics and virtue signaling to a world where it shouldn't fucking exist because it's pure fantasy. Again, fans should be in quotes. We're living in that world nowadays. "A lot of the world has already been built," added Daly. "You have all these books that you can use as references and creatures and monsters that are unique to D&D and no other fantasy piece of IP. To be able to embrace the absurdity and oddity of some of these creatures and spells allowed us to make the thing that we felt very much aligned with our sensibility. It should align with D&D. That's what it should align with. It should align with Dungeons & Dragons. It should align with the rules, classes, alignments, and so forth set within that world. So it shouldn't just align with your sensibility. It needs to align with what you're adapting to the screen." John mentioned Monty Python earlier in our conversation, interjected Goldstein. "That's not quite the tone, but what those guys did very successfully was make intelligent absurdity to shine a light on the ridiculousness of medieval cliches. We're trying to do that with the fantasy genre. It doesn't fucking belong in D&D. Alright? Monty Python is apart from D&D. Alright, now I'm not saying that to disparage Monty Python. I absolutely love Monty Python. I like the dry humor. I love the sketches and so forth. Not saying that in a negative light against Monty Python. But that brand of shining a light on ridiculousness of medieval cliches doesn't fucking belong in what you're claiming here to be respecting what came before. The spirit, as you will. That's not the spirit. This is basically, in my opinion, DOA. Not even DOA. Dead before arrival. Dead before arrival. To this end, Very then asked the directors if they had any opinion on why, quote, it's been so hard to adapt D&D into a successful movie, to which Daly opined, sometimes people take it too seriously and want to embrace the more dramatic elements of it. Okay, first off, okay, to play devil's advocates, yeah, some people do take it a little too seriously. However, what in itself is wrong with that? Taking something that you're passionate about seriously. Because you're seeing someone come in, essentially coming into like your sandbox, and wanting to change what you built. Alright? Or what you've known. You're seeing people come in and want to not only just add, but flat out annihilate, abolish everything you knew, everything you loved, everything you were passionate about up until now, and change, like, you know, beat it down and resurrect it as like a Frankenstein monster. So to the point where it's so unrecognizable that it's not what you grew up with. So I understand wanting to add levity, alright? Because it's an RPG. You're going to have some funny moments, depending on what people say, the actions they take and so forth. I play D&D, so I know. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, you want to all embrace the more dramatic elements because it's Dungeons and Dragons. It's not Monty Python. To us, that's ridiculous because you've got literally brains with 4 legs. You know, creatures that were so obviously written with a wink, said the former Bone Star. On the flip side, if you try to get too goofy with it, you're also doing it a disservice. Well, you're not exactly helping your case when you essentially say something up here where you're mentioning Monty Python, alright? Now, again, you're not exactly using Monty Python as a springboard, but at the same time, the fact that you are even putting it in the same sentence when you're talking about D&D doesn't bode well. Again, love Monty Python. Nothing negative about that. What we learned doing Spider-Man Homecoming was that while you have to have a certain reverence for and love of the source material, you can't let the weight of that thing hinder your creativity. How would it hinder your creativity? How would having a reverence for and love of the source material hinder your creativity? When the world is essentially built right fucking before you, where all you need to do is take that world, take the rules established within that world, and adapt it to the screen. How is that hindering your creativity? That, again, their second red flag. Second fucking red flag in what they're saying. It shouldn't hinder your creativity. It should at the very least bolster it. And if you can't do that, then were you even creative to begin with? Because you're taking existing IP and you're telling a story you want to tell, not what would fit within the existing lore. Pressed by Very as to how he shook that weight off. Yes, God fucking forbid that be a weight on your shoulders. For Honor Among Thieves, the co-director declared it never left us with this one. We had people looking over our shoulder from the brand, from the studio. Wizards of the Coast, I have no fucking faith in them whatsoever. He recalled. Even on set, we had advisors who said, well, she has to say something if she's going to do the spell because the spell has a verbal component. The good thing about working with D&D specifically is it's not like we're bound by the characters or pre-existing stories. We made up almost all the characters that are in here. Okay, I get that, alright? Because playing D&D, you create your own characters, alright? You create your own characters, and there's no exactly pre-existing, essentially, story. There are campaigns, but the stories themselves are basically played out by the players. The DM can set up one scenario and then completely get diverted because the players make a decision or choices or whatever, what have you, that derails what would have been the story progression and goes off on a different tangent. I get that. But at the same time, again, these characters have certain rules already established based on class and alignment and so forth. So again, you are still bound by existing lore and rules established within, pointing out here, there has to be a verbal component to the spell. So they're still bound by it. Alright? But then you have them saying that up here, you can't let the weight of reverence and love for the source material hinder your creativity. Again, if you cannot adapt an existing IP creatively, were you even creative to begin with? If you have to piggyback off an existing brand, were you creative to begin with? Yet despite being seemingly so aware, or at least more aware than the vast majority of Hollywood, of this general need for any successful adaptation to be respectful and earnest in its approach, Goldstein would confess that they accepted the opportunities to work with established IPs not because they were necessarily passionate about the source materials, but because they served as an effective vehicle with which to sell their own original concepts and stories. Third red flag. Asked by Very if to be able to do the kind of storytelling at the level you want to do it, do you feel you have to find a way into a franchise versus writing an original story, Goldstein admitted using existing IP certainly greases the wheels. Using an existing IP certainly greases the wheels. Dead before arrival. Any meeting we have with the studio head starts with, "Here's 4 things we own, got any interest?" Said the co-director. "To some extent, I think we use intellectual property as a bit of a costume to get ourselves in the door." So basically say you have no interest. Just say you have no fucking interest. But you picked one that you could remotely work with to use as a vehicle for your own stories. Just come out and admit that shit. We're still going to make the movie that we want to make. It just makes it all a bit easier to get going if it has something that people are very familiar with. Again, where have we seen this shit before? Where have we seen this shit before? Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves is set to roll into theaters on March 31st, 2022. That was just Netflix, but oh well. I'm not even pirating this shit. Let's put it this way. I didn't think it would be necessarily be a wide theatrical release, but I'm not planning on seeing it. I don't even think I'm going to be even sailing the high seas for this shit, especially when you have other articles like this, where the writing team for said movie is intentionally emasculating its leading men for shits and giggles. So you have this, and you have this. Yeah, this is going to go over so fucking well, but at any rate, what are your thoughts down in the comments below? Are you surprised at the story? Are you not surprised at this story? Are you planning on seeing this movie? If you are, let me know. If you're not, tell me why. All that fun stuff. I'll be live later on Twitch tonight playing some Call of Duty multiplayer because Thursday the plan is to play some Sons of the Forest with Cowman, so that'll be my first foray into that game. So come watch the mayhem as I try to navigate that world and not get eaten by cannibals and so forth this coming Thursday. Tomorrow on YouTube will be the first stream in the 1s and 2s streams where we'll be talking about the Boondock Saints film. So tomorrow, you have until 8 p.m. Eastern to watch Boondock Saints, the first movie. Now, I'm going to be talking about the unrated version, so if you have access to that, you can watch that, or watch the basically theatrical cut. I'm not exactly going into too many details with the differences, but that's the version I'll be watching, the unrated version. So tune in for that 8 p.m. Eastern that I do with Orange Chat Reviews. Again, let me know all this fun stuff down in the comments below, and like, share, subscribe for more content. This is Mara Jade, catch you on the dark side, and again, not fucking surprised in the least.